The coining of the word photography is usually ascribed to Sir John Herschel in 1839. It is based upon the Greek photos, meaning light, and graphe, meaning drawing or writing, together meaning drawing with light. The history of photography began in remote antiquity with the discovery of two essential principles: the camera obscura image projection and the observation that some substances are visibly altered by exposure to light. There are no artifacts or descriptions that indicate any attempt to capture images with light-sensitive materials prior to the 18th century. Around 1717, Johann Heinrich Schultz captured cut-out letters on a bottle of a light-sensitive slurry. Around 1800, Thomas Wedgwood made the first reliably documented, although unsuccessful, attempt at capturing camera images in permanent form. But Wedgwood and his associate Humphrey Davy found no way to fix these images. In the mid-1820s, Nicephore Niépce first managed to fix an image that was captured with a camera, but at least 8 hours or even several days of exposure in the camera were required, and the earliest results were very crude. Niépce's associate Louis Daguerre went on to develop the daguerreotype process, the first publicly announced and commercially viable photographic process. The daguerreotype requires only minutes of exposure in the camera and produced clear, finely detailed results. The details were introduced to the world in 1839, a date generally accepted as the birth year of practical photography. The metal-based daguerreotype process soon had some competition from the paper-based calotype negative and salt print process invented by William Henry Fox Talbot. Subsequent innovations made photography easier and more versatile. New materials reduced the required camera exposure time from minutes to seconds, and eventually to a small fraction of a second. New photographic media were more economical, sensitive and convenient. Since the 1850s, the collodion process with its glass-based photographic plates combined the high quality known from the daguerreotype with the multiple print options known from the calotype, and was commonly used for decades. Roll films popularized casual use by the amateurs. In the mid-20th century, developments made it possible for amateurs to take pictures in natural color as well as in black and white. The commercial introduction of computer-based electronic digital cameras in the 1990s soon revolutionized photography. During the first decade of the 21st century, traditional film-based methods were increasingly marginalized as the practical advantages of the new technology became widely appreciated, and the image quality of moderately priced digital cameras was continually improved, especially since cameras became a standard feature on smartphones. Taking pictures and instantly publishing them online has become an ubiquitous, everyday practice around the world. The natural phenomenon known as camera obscura or pinhole camera image can project a reversed image through a small opening onto an opposite surface. This principle may have been known and used in prehistoric times. The earliest known written record of the camera obscura is to be found in Chinese writings by Mozi, dated to the 4th century BC. Until the 16th century, the camera obscura was mainly used to study optics and astronomy, especially to safely watch solar eclipses without damaging the eyes. In the later half of the 16th century, some technical improvements were developed by Girolamo Cardano in 1550 and Daniel Barbaro in 1568, which gave a brighter and sharper image. In 1558, Giambattista della Porta advised using the camera obscura as a drawing aid in his popular and influential books. The box-type camera obscura was the basis for the earliest photographic camera when photography was developed in the early 19th century. The notion that light can affect various substances, for instance the sun tanning of skin or fading of textile, must have been around since very early times. Ideas of fixing the images seen in mirrors or other ways of creating images automatically may also have been in people's minds long before anything like photography was developed. However, there seems to be no historical records of any ideas even remotely resembling photography before 1700, despite early knowledge of light-sensitive materials and the camera obscura. In 1614, Angelo Sala noted that sunlight will turn powdered silver nitrate black. Wilhelm Homburg described how light darkened some chemicals in 1694. Around 1717, German polymath Johann Heinrich Schultz accidentally discovered that a slurry mixture of chalk and nitric acid, into which some silver particles had been dissolved, was darkened by sunlight. Schultz named the substance scotophores when he published his findings in 1719. Schultz's process resembled later photogram techniques and is sometimes regarded as the very first form of photography. In 1777, the chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele was studying the more intrinsically light-sensitive silver chloride and determined that light darkened it by disintegrating it into microscopic dark particles of metallic silver. Of greater potential usefulness, Scheele found that ammonia dissolved silver chloride but not the dark particles. This discovery could have been used to stabilize or fix a camera image captured with silver chloride, but was not picked up by the earliest photographic experimenters. English photographer and inventor Thomas Wedgwood is believed to have been the first person to have thought of creating permanent pictures by capturing camera images on material coated with a light-sensitive chemical. He originally wanted to capture the image of a camera obscura, but found that they were too faint to have an effect upon the silver nitrate solution that was recommended to him as a light-sensitive substance. It is unclear when Wedgwood's experiments took place. He may have started before 1790. James Watt wrote a letter to Thomas Wedgwood's father, Josiah Wedgwood, to thank him for your instructions as to the silver pictures, about which, when at home, I will make some experiments. This letter, now lost, is believed to have been written in 1790, 1791 or 1799. In 1802, an account by Humphrey Davy detailing Wedgwood's experiments was published in an early journal of the Royal Institution, with the title An Account of a method of copying paintings upon glass and of making profiles by the agency of light upon nitrate of silver. Davy, apparently unaware or forgetful of Scheele's discovery, concluded that substances should be found to eliminate or deactivate the unexposed particles in silver nitrate or silver chloride, to render the process as useful as it is elegant. Wedgwood may have prematurely abandoned his experiments because of his frail and failing health. He died at age 34 in 1805. Apparently the article was not noted by Nespis or Daguerre, and by Talbot only after he had developed his own processes. French balloonist, professor and inventor Jacques Charles is believed to have captured fleeting negative photograms of silhouettes on light-sensitive paper at the start of the 19th century, prior to Wedgwood. Charles died in 1823 without having documented the process, but purportedly demonstrated it in his lectures at the Louvre. It was not publicized until François Arago mentioned it in his introduction to the details of the daguerreotype to the world in 1839. Nespis died suddenly in 1833, leaving his notes to Daguerre. More interested in silver-based processes than Nespis had been, Daguerre experimented with photographing camera images directly onto a mirror-like silver surface plate that had been fumed with iodine vapour, which reacted with the silver to form a coating of silver iodide. French-born Hercules Florence developed his own photographic technique in Brazil in 1832 or 1833, with some help of pharmacist Joaquim Correas de Mello, 1816 to 1877. Henry Fox Talbot had already succeeded in creating stabilized photographic negatives on paper in 1835, but worked on perfecting his own process after reading early reports of Degas' invention. In early 1839 he acquired a key improvement, an effective fixer from his friend John Herschel, a polymath scientist who had previously shown that hyposulfite of soda, commonly called hypo and now known formally as sodium thiosulfate, would dissolve silver salts. In 1841 Talbot invented the calotype process, which, like Daguerre's process, used the principle of chemical development of a faint or invisible latent image to reduce the exposure time to a few minutes. Paper with a coating of silver iodide was exposed in the camera and developed into a translucent negative image. Unlike a daguerreotype, which could only be copied by photographing it with a camera, a calotype negative could be used to make a large number of positive prints by simple contact printing. Nonetheless, Talbot's developed out silver halide negative process is the basic technology used by chemical film cameras today. Hippolyte Bayard had also developed a method of photography, but delayed announcing it, and so was not recognized as its inventor. In 1839, John Herschel made the first glass negative, but his process was difficult to reproduce. Slovenian Janez Puha invented a process for making photographs on glass in 1841. It was recognized on June 17, 1852 in Paris. In 1847, Nicephore Nespis' cousin, the chemist Nesphys Saint-Victor published his invention of a process for making glass plates with an albumin emulsion. The Langham brothers of Philadelphia and John Whipple and William Breed Jones of Boston also invented workable negative on glass processes in the mid-1840s. In 1851, English sculptor Frederick Scott Archer invented the collodion process. Photographer and children's author Lewis Carroll used this process. Carroll refers to the process as Talbot type in the story A Photographer's Day Out. Herbert Bower Berkeley experimented with his own version of collodion emulsions, and in the 19th century experimentation with photographic processes frequently became proprietary. The daguerreotype proved fashionable in response to the demand for portraiture that emerged from the middle classes during the Industrial Revolution. Roger Fenton helped popularise the new way of recording events by his Crimean War pictures, and Philip Henry Delamotte by his record of the disassembly and reconstruction of the Crystal Palace in London. Other mid-19th century photographers established the medium as a more precise means than engraving or lithography of making a record of landscapes and architecture. For example, Robert Macpherson's broad range of photographs of Rome, the interior of the Vatican and the surrounding countryside became a sophisticated tourist's visual record of his own travels. In 1839, Francois Arago reported the invention of photography to stunned listeners by displaying the first photos taken in Egypt, that of Ras El Tin Palace. However, daguerreotypes were fragile and difficult to copy. Photographers encouraged chemists to refine the process of making many copies cheaply, which eventually led them back to Talbot's process. Ultimately, the photographic process came about from a series of refinements and improvements in the first 20 years. In 1884, George Eastman of Rochester, New York, developed dry gel on paper or film. In July 1888, Eastman's Kodak camera went on the market with the slogan, "You press the button, we do the rest." Now anyone can take a photograph and leave the complex parts of the process to others, and photography became available for the mass market in 1901 with the introduction of the Kodak Brownie. The first durable colour photograph was taken by Thomas Sutton in 1861. A practical means of colour photography was sought from the very beginning. Results were demonstrated by Edmund Becquerel as early as the year of 1848, but exposures lasting for hours or days were required, and the captured colours were so light sensitive that they would only bear very brief inspection in dim light. The first durable colour photograph was a set of 3 black and white photographs taken through red, green and blue colour filters and shown superimposed by using 3 projectors with similar filters. It was taken by Thomas Sutton in 1861 for use in a lecture by the Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell, who had proposed the method in 1855. 2 French inventors, Louis Ducos de Heuron and Charles Gros, working unknown to each other during the 1860s, famously unveiled their nearly identical ideas on the same day in 1869. Included were methods for viewing sets of 3 coloured filtered black and white photographs in colour without having to project them, and for using them to make full colour prints on paper. The first widely used method of colour photography was the autochrome plate, a process inventors and brothers Auguste and Louis Lumière began working on in the 1890s and commercially introduced in 1907. A colour print of Mark Twain by Alvin Langdon Goben, 1908, made by the recently introduced autochrome process. A new era in colour photography began with the introduction of Kodachrome film, available for 16mm home movies in 1935 and 35mm slides in 1936. It captured the red, green and blue colour components in 3 layers of emulsion, and Polachrome, an instant slide film that uses the autochrome's additive principle, was available until 2003. But the few colour prints and slide films still being made in 2015 all use the multi-layer approach pioneered by Kodachrome. In 1957, a team led by Russell A. Kirsch at the National Institute of Standards and Technology developed a binary digital version of an existing technology, the wire photo drum scanner. One of the first photographs scanned was a picture of Kirsch's infant son Walden. The charge coupled device, CCD, is the image capturing optoelectronic component in first generation digital cameras. It was invented in 1969 by Willard Boyle and George E. Smith at AT&T Bell Labs as a memory device. It was Dr. Michael Tomsett from Bell Labs, however, who discovered that the CCD could be used as an imaging sensor. The CCD has increasingly been replaced by the active pixel sensor, APS, commonly used in cell phone cameras. In 1973, Fairchild Semiconductors released the first large image capturing CCD chip. Then in 1975, Bryce Bayer of Kodak develops the Bayer filter mosaic pattern for CCD color image sensors, and in 1986 Kodak scientists developed the world's first megapixel sensor. The web has been a popular medium for storing and sharing photos ever since the first photograph was published on the web by Tim Berners-Lee in 1992. Since then, sites and apps such as Facebook, Flickr, Instagram, Picasa, discontinued in 2016, Imgur and Photobucket have been used by many millions of people to share their pictures.